Hey everybody, it's Connie with Gliding Through Blindness, and I have a special guest with me today, Sean Welker from Visual Eyes Access, and he's going to tell us all about the great service that he provides. And welcome to the show, Sean.
Thank you very much, Connie. I appreciate it. So,
Yeah, I was just going to say that I want everybody to pay close attention, especially those of you that are blind, because um, this is going to be very important information for all of you because visual interpreting is something that we all really appreciate and can't even really imagine a world without it now. So that's one of the main things that he's going to tell us all about from his perspective and his great website, etc. So I will turn it over to Sean.
yeah, no, I appreciate it. So it's funny because that you bring this up because I was just at the NFB California State Convention. They piggybacked this year right after the week of CSUN. And one of the things that I had brought up during my vendor showcase presentation was the fact that, we've had visual interpreting kind of as an industry now for about 10 years, right? I know that Be My Eyes and Ira both kind of recently celebrated those 10-year anniversaries, but my conversations that I've had with folks who are blind and receive sighted assistance on occasion, they'll tell you that it's existed for as long as blind people have existed, right? It's just the technology that we use today is a little bit different. You know, I know that lots of folks have shared, using FaceTime or WhatsApp to make that quick emergency phone call to a family member or friend, to get that quick sighted assistance. Hey, I dropped my AirPod, help me find it. Um, and so I've been in this space for a decent amount of time. I've been here for about 6 years, and I got my start back in 2018 and 2019 with IRA. I went through two convention seasons with them. By the end, I was also training. And then after I left for a new job with a new company, unfortunately, the pandemic hit shortly thereafter,
Mhm.
and so I was looking for work again. And fortunately for me, because of the relationships I had built while I was a visual interpreter, the executive director at MABV, the Massachusetts Association for the Blind and Visually Impaired, Sassy Outwater Wright, she reached out to me and informed me that they didn't necessarily have full-time employment, but what they did have was a year-long apprenticeship. So I was able to put food on the table for that year and was also
Wow.
able to learn about web accessibility, digital accessibility, learn about access technology. And then very fortuitously, about halfway through that year, she approached me again and said, "Hey, look, I don't know how familiar you are with Be My Eyes, but those are kind of like the two options that are out there in the world of visual interpreting. You got your volunteers with Be My Eyes, millions, literally millions of volunteers worldwide. And then, you've got your paid subscription service with Ira. She said, Be My Eyes was doing something different, something new called specialized help, and they were reaching out to the different blindness organizations, asking them to come on board. And because they were a nonprofit, they were offering use of that platform free of charge. And we were really able as a nonprofit to kind of determine what we wanted to use that service for. And some organizations were simply using it as a help desk or another way to kind of route, phone traffic. And my boss said, "Hey, look, you've got experience with visual interpreting. Why don't you see how far we can take this?" And so we started with a group of students from the New England College of Optometry, and we trained them on how to provide visual interpreting services. We trained them on how to use the Be My Eyes dashboard. And then we also took some of our folks that were participating in our assistive technology program, and we trained them on how to use it as end users. And they started placing calls. We ran a 6-week pilot. And by the end of it, everybody involved really said, "Hey, look, this is a great experience. Let's expand it." And that was 3.5 years of running that program. And by the time we got to the end, we had a team of 50 volunteers. We were providing almost 80 hours a week of free on-demand service through specialized help. But unfortunately, my time at MABB came to an end due to a funding crisis. We ended up losing a significant contract, and unfortunately, that meant that my position and that Be My Eye Specialized Help program were no longer going to exist. Well, that was last year, and almost exactly a year ago. And so I went to the national conventions, both ACB and NFB down in Florida. It was nice and easy to get between Jackson and Orlando, or Jacksonville and Orlando. And I had conversations with folks. I said, hey, look, I think my time may be coming to an end. I know a lot of you have used this service. What can we do? What do you want to do about this? It was a community, and I felt very much integral to that, and I felt as though I was letting people down. And I said, hey, look, we have to find a way to make this continue. I did try to pursue nonprofit, starting up a brand new nonprofit in order to be able to use that, Be My Eyes platform for free. Unfortunately, we ran into some snags there, and we're not able to get picked up by a fiduciary the way I thought we would. But folks said, hey, look, if you turn this into a for-profit business, I'm happy to use your service. You just got to let me know how it's going to work. So in August of 2024, I started Visual Eyes Access, and it was real small, just a handful of folks who knew about it. We were connecting using WhatsApp, which we still do. And the great thing about using WhatsApp that I found is, the folks at Meta and Ray-Ban, they came to those national conventions last year absolutely prepared to let folks know about how you could use those smart glasses as a form of an accessibility tool. And so being able to connect with folks hands-free makes those navigations, makes a lot of different things that we do so much easier because you've got that static camera right on your glasses. You don't have to worry about holding your phone and having one less hand to be able to use to hold a cane or your bags or whatever. So we've been doing this and slowly but surely kind of gradually building up a following. And so we're at the point now where we've got probably about 30 or 40 folks who are on subscription plans. I also offer the ability for folks to simply pay as you go. So if you don't want to have a subscription, you just call in and schedule a time for us to complete a task. Once that task is completed, it's the standard rate is going to be $1 per minute, and I just send out an email invoice through Stripe and collect that person's payment. Just next time they need the service, same situation. I use Calendly to schedule folks. Since it's just myself, I'm the only person currently providing visual interpreting. I do have one person who works with me, Sarah. She provides assistance with keeping the website up to date, making sure that we're handling any sort of accessibility requests. We recently actually had a request come from somebody who said, hey, I'd like to use this site, and they have a menu of different ice creams. And literally, there's like 50 different ice creams listed, right? And each has its own image, each has its own description, flavor, and it just wasn't accessible in any way, shape, or form. So what we did is we went through and we took all that information, created headings for the different types of ice creams, and then made sure that each one of those descriptions was included. They indicated that they did not need any sort of alt text for the images. We didn't include those, but we made sure it was an accessible document that now they have the ability to have access to this information. And this is something that in the field of visual interpreting, I don't know if there really is a standard definition of like what is visual interpreting. And so for myself, and when I trained my volunteers when I was at MAPI, I always told folks that it's about providing access to information in a way that is meaningful and relevant to the person you're providing it to, so that they have a better understanding of their environment, whether it's, physical or digital, so that they can make a good decision for themselves. And that's it. I try to make sure that whatever sort of task I'm being asked to assist with, that I'm always keeping that in the back of my mind as far as how I provide assistance. I would say that 90% of what we do needs to, rely on being objective. It's not up to us to make decisions for blind people. I always asked my volunteers when they first started and first got going through our onboarding process or through training, and I said, hey, who makes decisions for blind people? And you could kind of tell if the person was going to succeed with our program or not on how they would
Mhm.
respond. And ultimately the right answer is blind people make decisions for blind people, right? I'm not here to make
Always.
decisions for folks. I'm here to provide access to information because the world is built for other people. The world is designed for other people. And that's what creates the disability. That's what creates the inaccessible environment. So, being able to provide access to that information so that a person can make a decision for themselves, it's great, right? It's inclusive. It provides a sense of autonomy. But the other side to that, though, is it's very important to me that we have to provide this in a way that is accessible financially, right? Be My Eyes is great. They're free. They've got this huge crowdsourced pool of volunteers. I think last count was like over 8.5 million worldwide. But at the same time, you're also dealing with folks that are not background checked. They don't go through any comprehensive training. They're given kind of just a few pointers. And a lot of them have, when they came to me and said, "Hey, I want to volunteer for your program." Hey, great. Have you handled calls before? Well, yeah, I've been signed up as a volunteer with Be My Eyes, but I only get like maybe 1 or 2 calls a year. Holy cow. How can you get good at something if you're only doing it once or twice a year, right? So it's got to be high quality. It's got to be comprehensive. We have to have people with accessibility training who are providing, assistance. We have to have folks who have disability training. But then on the other side of things, we have to make sure that we're keeping it affordable. And one of the things that we did recently, so I start with that dollar per minute rate. It goes down if you decide that you want to have a larger pool of minutes, or if you decide you want to pay on a quarterly or annual basis. There's some discounts that can be offered that way. I don't list my prices on the website, but anybody who's interested, there's a contact form you can submit. And I'm happy to send that information, my rate sheet and information, out to anybody who's interested. And the other thing that I always ask is just give me a phone call. Just set up a time to talk. Because what I want to do is I don't want to sell you anything. I'm not a salesperson. I hate sales. I don't like feeling as though I'm being manipulated into purchasing something that I kind of don't want, right? But what I do want is I want people to understand very clearly how the service works, how the payment plans work, so that we can get folks onto right-sized plans if they want to be on a plan. The other thing that I've decided to do is a stark contrast is that if you purchase minutes, if you have a subscription, and you get to the end of your billing cycle, there's always been this mad dash to use minutes. I got to burn these minutes. I'm going to lose them. So I said that doesn't make sense to me. And as a small business, as just an independent, business owner, I have the ability to make that call. And I've said, we're going to let people keep those minutes. There's no
Awesome.
reason in my mind that
Mm-hmm.
if somebody pays me for something, I already have your money. There's no reason for me to take away what you've purchased, and what you've purchased is my time. You get that time. It doesn't matter if you need all that time in 1 month, or you're going to spread that time over 3 months, or however you want to do it. And I actually have some people who say, hey, this works out a lot better for me. I can kind of pay on a monthly or a quarterly basis, build up my pool of minutes, because I know that there's certain events that I like to go to, and I want to burn
Mm-hmm.
3 hours at one time because I'm going to the theater and we're going to have it, described. Or we recently had a situation where somebody went to a dog show. And so they brought their camera with them, and they were able to get a nice, good view of where the judging was being done. And we were able to provide, description, 3 hours of description of a dog show. So there's lots of different things that people can do. I absolutely am a big fan of navigation. It's something that I enjoy doing. It's something that it's helpful to know how to navigate your environment. And again, it goes back to this whole idea of I'm not there to tell you what decisions to make. I'm there to tell you about your environment so that you have a better understanding of it. And eventually, what I want to do is get to the point where you don't need me, because you've learned your environment so well and you're so used to navigating a particular path that you're able to figure it out on your own, and you don't need the use of sighted assistance any longer. I mean, that's kind of what it's all
Cool.
about, right? It's about making it accessible autonomously. And if I can do that during this process of you using our service, which I call Visual Interpreter Pro, or VIP service, that's great. That's what we're here for. I would love to get to the point where all of my users no longer need my service, because they're either things are so accessible for them, or they've learned their environment well enough that they can navigate independently. Now, we know that the world is not accessible by nature, so there's always going to be kind of that need for sighted assistance on occasion. And some people have said, "Hey, I don't know if you would be my first choice." And I said, I don't need to be your first choice. I just need folks to know that there's a choice. We've had for 10 years, we've had Be My Eyes, we've had Ira, we've really had nothing kind of in the middle, right? Something that's comprehensive, something where folks have accessibility training, folks are background checked, they're trustworthy. You get kind of this personalized experience because when you call in, you're just going to get me, right? You're going to get the same person. It's going to be very consistent, very knowledgeable, been in this space for 6 years. But at the same time, it's hopefully going to be a little bit more affordable. Now, here's one other thing that I wanted to share about affordability. We have a lot of guide dog users. And so recently I reached out kind of back in maybe December, I reached out to my guide dog users and I said, "Hey, do you have any particular store or shop that you use for your guide dog supplies?" I mean, I have a dog myself and I know that on a regular basis I need, dog food and treats and, chew toys and all sorts of other stuff. And they said, "No, not really. Why? What's going on? What do you have, planned?" So we started up a web store that's tied to our website. It's called the Provisions Shop, and we've got all sorts of stuff in there specific for dogs, and we say not just guide dogs, but like dogs of all kinds, right? And the reason why we're doing this is because on any purchase, you're going to be able to receive if you're someone who uses visual interpretation, you'll be able to receive 10% back of your purchase in the form of visual interpreter minutes. So if you go in and you place a $50 order, once that's paid for, I'm going to put 5 minutes on your account. Now, that in and of itself doesn't probably seem like a whole lot, but here's the thing. You got friends and family members, other folks who may need, dog supplies. Send them to the provision shop, and if they don't need those minutes, if they're not going to use them, we will reach out to them and find out, hey, is there somebody specific that you'd like to donate these minutes to? If not, it just kind of goes back into the business. We absorb it back. But if they do, they can absolutely say, you know what? I just bought $100 worth of supplies. I know I get 10 minutes. Please put those on Connie Ellis's account. Well, we'll notify Connie Ellis, hey, a purchase was made, and you now have an additional 10 minutes on your account. So another way, just kind of a creative way that we think that we'll be able to provide people access to visual interpreter minutes, high quality service. And honestly, if you have a dog or you refer some friends or family members to purchase their supplies through us, it's not going to cost you a dime, right? It's already going to be either things that you would purchase anyway, or it's going to be folks that you refer, and you're not, spending a dime on that anyways. And you'll be able to benefit from those minutes being added to your account. So really excited to share that. We just announced that at the NFB State Convention. Had some real good conversations out there, and have already connected with some folks, getting new users onto our service. And I'm really excited to be here today and share with your audience as well.
Yeah, I've been taking lots of notes here while I was listening to you, so that's just awesome. Have you ever thought about selling other things besides guide dog
Yeah.
supplies, like maybe like canes or other blind devices or etc.?
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. So eventually what we want to do is we want to, because again, this could be a potential really good source of revenue that allows folks to then have access to this service completely free. Ultimately, what I would love to see is that this becomes so big that literally I don't even have to have subscription services anymore. I don't have to ask people to pay for the service anymore because we're funding it completely through this web store. So
Mhm.
I'm taking recommendations. I'm definitely paying attention to the things that people are requesting. One of the things that's very important to me, and I do have a monthly newsletter that I send out. There is a subscription link on the website, which is www.visualeyesaccess.com. And so the eyes part is EYES, visualeyesaccess.com. So people can get signed up to stay informed on a monthly basis of kind of the updates. There's a lot of changes that have been made over the past just 9, 10 months. Um, and so we hope to be able to add on a very regular basis new products, keep things fresh, and make sure that people are coming back and checking out our new stuff. And I'm absolutely a big fan of asking, our users, our clients, hey, what is it that you're interested in? I've got access to quite a few different suppliers, and we've got access to all sorts of different things that we could sell there. we don't want to turn it into this big cluttered mess though, where it just doesn't really make sense. But if it's things that folks are saying, hey, yeah, we'd be interested in purchasing this through you, then absolutely, let's find those things. Let's make it happen. I know that our cat user, our cat moms and dads out there, they were a little disappointed when I said that no, I don't have any cat supplies. So that will be something that we look at in the
Funny.
not too distant future. Just getting the store up and running, and letting people know kind of how that works. That's kind of the goal for the next few months. We've got the conventions coming up in just a few months here in July, so we're hoping by then lots of people will have found us, and that'll be hopefully kind of a big coming out celebration at those national conventions. We are planning on being at both as an exhibitor, and of course, if anybody has seen me at any of the national events, they know that I'm a big fan of doing sighted guide while I'm there with folks. It's just a different experience being able to be physically
Mhm.
spending time with folks who, I've seen through the camera lens for so many years now. And it's important to me to be part of the community, not just show up and exhibit and then disappear, but to spend time with folks, have conversations, share a meal, maybe even a pint or two, wink, wink. So it's being part of that community and sharing those stories and actually, listening, just spending time listening to folks and their concerns, and hopefully finding a way to address some of those concerns about accessibility, about affordability, through how I run, this small business.
Very cool. And I will put a link to the website in the description, of course, of this video. Hopefully I won't forget that now that I said I was going to, but I'm sure I'll get reminded if I do forget. But yeah, I'm just really impressed that you've only been doing this since like August and just how professional and everything it is already. And I love reading your newsletter. You always have like interesting stories in there of what you've done the last month and like things you've done for people. And do you have any? Well, you already mentioned about the ice cream, like
Yeah.
how you made the menu more accessible for them, but you just do like everything. I'm just amazed.
Like I said, it needs to be comprehensive. I think
Hmm.
that, again, there's really not like an industry standard definition of visual interpreting, right? And
Hmm.
if we think about it just being, really simply access to information, well, that includes websites, that include, and we do remote desktop. It includes, print material. There's so many different ways that you can provide access, and it's not just about um, necessarily things that you can see. It's also about the digital environment, right? Websites and print material, documents, images. I quite literally have somebody right now who is getting back on their feet in the dating scene, and so they'll send me some images and they'll say, "Hey, can you kind of tell me what you think this person looks like?" And yeah, absolutely. But the one thing that I always try to do is I try to lean again very heavily on the objective, right? It's not
Hmm.
up to me to make that decision, but this
Hmm.
person knows me well enough and we've known each other for a long time. So they actually have encouraged. They say, "I trust your opinion. I want to know your opinion of this person." So yes, I love the objective, but also give me a little bit of, hey, what does Sean really think about this person? Do they look trustworthy? Does it look like somebody who would be a good, match with me? Um, so and again, without having that knowledge of that person and
Hmm.
and really having spent time with them, it would be very difficult to do. And you don't know what their preferences are, right? So being able to be very consistent and spend that time with people, getting to know how they like their visual interpreting done. I have another person who, when they do navigations, they could care less about the actual descriptions of intersections, of traffic controls, because they're navigating spaces that they go all the time. What
Hmm.
they're interested in is, what's it like outside? Are there people out here?
Hmm.
Is there anything interesting going on? And it was really interesting. I had somebody who I was doing this for, and so I knew that they wanted more description of their environment. I said, "Hey, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but it looks like on the map I'm seeing that there's a music store up ahead of you on your left. You're going to be passing it here in about 50 feet, and the parking lot you're gonna approach that first. And so there's this big open space, so you can see this sidewall, this brick wall, and it's got a giant guitar painted on it, and it literally extends above the building, like the neck of the guitar was kind of like at an angle, And so the neck of the guitar, clearly they had built some sort of like wooden structure or something. So it literally came off the top of the building and it was probably like 3 stories tall. And the person goes, I've lived here for years.
Never
I've
knew.
walked past this store so many times and I never knew that. And that was just something that, allowed them to have access to the same things
Mhm.
that anybody else walking down that street would have. Um, so, it's again, it's more personalized.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's well, and as you can tell, it's something that I absolutely love doing, right? I get so
Passionate.
excited about getting on these calls and knowing and understanding that it's something that is adding value to this person's day, right?
Mhm. Wow, and I love how flexible you are, like just meeting people where they're at. And like you said, now you're getting to know like a lot of your clients and just have that personal relationship too. And I mean, like even you had messaged me a few days ago, and I on WhatsApp, and I said I don't really use WhatsApp all that much. So, and so then you just changed over to email, and just little things like that mean so much. And I don't know if this is still the case, but I know back when you were getting started, you said like it doesn't have to be WhatsApp. We can meet on Messenger or FaceTime or whatever.
Right.
Is that still the case?
I do have a few folks who will call in every now and then on the Envision glasses. I
Hmm.
know that Envision is kind of going by the wayside since Meta came out.
Yeah,
But since a lot of folks are using the Meta smart glasses and WhatsApp is already accessible through
integrated with
there.
them. Hmm.
Exactly. It just makes things so much nicer. In fact, literally, I have a brand new client that I just picked up from California. We had our first session yesterday, and she just wanted assistance navigating through her apartment complex, locating, what's the best path of travel for me to get from, where I'm at down to the dumpster, down to the mailboxes, and back to and so we went through that, and there was a lot of things that she's like, I didn't know some of the things that you're sharing with me. These are all helpful. And she had even asked, she was like, well, what do you think about the smart glasses, the Ray-Bans? Like, yeah, go get
Hmm.
them if you can, go get them. And she was even saying, well, but the some of the features they say aren't available yet, and they think that they'll be coming out soon. Should I wait? And I tell people this all the time. I say at the price point that they're at, compared to the
Exactly.
other alternatives, absolutely, it is well worth going again. And just for the fact of being hands free,
Hmm.
she did a great job. She had her cane, she had her bag of garbage, and she was holding her
Wow.
phone. So,
Yeah.
and for the first time for us to be doing that, for us to be able to navigate that successfully, that was huge. And I said, you know what? It would be so much easier though if you had those smart glasses. So having experience working in accessibility, paying attention to kind of some of the new products that are coming out, understanding how they work. Um, I have folks coming to me asking me about accessibility or access technology, and I love that because we get to have those conversations. Somebody at CSUN, while they were there, contacted me directly and said, "Hey, I'm at the Ajija booth," which I always thought it was pronounced Agiga.
That's what I thought
And they're
too.
right? So I was like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So, they're like, hey, they've got this really good deal and I'm interested, but I'm not sure. And so we had a candid conversation about it. I didn't tell them to or not. I just
Hmm.
said, this is my understanding of how things operate there. This is what their pros are. These are what I think some cons may be. And I didn't even ask them if they, went through with making the purchase. I just said, those are kind of my thoughts. And, so I sat back about and thought about it later, and I just realized how big of a deal that was to me to feel as though I was um, somebody that they trusted to be able to provide that sort of feedback. I'm not an access technology user primarily, right?
Hmm.
I provide sighted assistance. I have familiarity with access technology. I'll throw on a screen reader if I need to do testing. I'll throw on, VoiceOver or JAWS or NVDA or whatever. And, every now and then there'll be, an app that I want to try out and see how it works because I want to understand how the end users are experiencing it. And there's actually been times where I've turned on accessibility, so-called accessibility tools or apps, and noticed there's some accessibility issues with this app. So it's always interesting, putting yourself into that position. I think it gives me a lot better understanding of the experience that the folks that I'm providing services to, their environment and their world. And again, if I can't translate that environment for them, I'm not doing my job.
Hmm. Cool. And is a subscription necessary, or can people just do like one-off type things, or?
You can do one-off type things. That's just what I would call a pay as you go. So I would still want folks to set that up ahead of time. I use Calendly. It's the most accessible scheduling platform that I've found.
Mhm.
And when you go in there, you can just literally set up a time, 15, 30, or 60 minutes. And if people don't want the hassle with going through Calendly, they can just reach out to me directly and I'll put it on the calendar. I'll literally submit the Calendly event for you so that we both get it on, our personal calendars.
Mhm.
Um, we do the task, and the great thing about doing the task through WhatsApp or any of the other platforms is primarily typically they're going to show you how long the call took. So if we spend any time talking about kind of administrative stuff, like you're interested in learning more about the services, we talk about getting on a subscription, things like that, and it's not really task related, we're not going to charge it for those minutes. But if your task takes, 15 minutes and you just want to pay as you go, I'll send you an invoice through Stripe. It'll hit your email. There's a payment link right there. It's accessible. It's very easy to use. It's got lots of different options for how to pay. Um, and once it's paid, I know you're ready for the next one. And whenever you're ready for another one, we get that on the calendar as well. And then again, with my subscription plans, anyone who uses them, they're not going to lose those minutes. So if you do
Yeah.
a plan that's 60 minutes a month, or maybe you only want it 30, the nice thing is if you don't use them, or if you don't use all of them, they're going to carry over. And so you can very easily kind of build a little bankroll of minutes, so that if you do find that you've got something that's going to require a little bit more time, or maybe you want to bank some minutes towards something that's kind of a bigger project. One of the things that we do is audio description. So if anybody is interested in that, I mean, that takes a lot of time. But I know that there's some folks who have said, yeah, if I knew that I could get that. I have somebody that I use who has gone through the Joel Snyder audio description training course. I myself have not gone through it, but I have plenty of accessibility training. I have a professional voiceover artist who does the actual voiceovers. We can save time if interested, by using AI to voice it. As you know, the AI voices that are out these days are significantly better than the
Mhm.
old tinny voices on JAWS or VoiceOver. So those are actually decent options if anybody is interested in saving a little bit of money. I know that in some cases within the audio description community, there's they want to make sure that paid professionals are being used for these services. As somebody who really advocates for inclusion and accessibility, I understand that there's folks that simply can't afford, to pay for something like that on their own. And if the studios aren't going to do that, we're not just going to sit around and wait, until all of a sudden, hey, this show or this movie or whatever, gets audio described. So that's something that I think over the course of time, I'm hoping that we are able to bring in enough through our various different revenue streams to be able to start making those an option where people can make those requests, and we
Mhm.
can make those available to folks.
Wow, very cool. And so can people just call you in like impromptu for a task, or do you prefer to schedule a appointment in advance?
Yeah, so that's definitely one of the big differences with me. Since it's just me,
Yeah, that's what I was
I'm
thinking. Like
doing a
during
lot.
confession or convention, I mean, like a lot of people
I
are gonna want you then. So yeah, you're only one guy.
I do not handle confession. That's above my pay grade. I don't think I'm qualified for that.
You never
But
know.
so I did actually handle some calls while I was at CSUN and the conventions, and it was primarily just because people told me ahead of time. They said, "Hey, I'd like XYZ at certain times," and I said, "Okay, I'll make sure that I'm available."
Uh-huh.
As a small business owner, I have to meet. the folks that are putting food on my table where they're at. And if you say you want assistance
Yeah.
and you're paying, for my service, I'm going to do what I can to make sure that that service is being provided to you when you need
Hmm.
it. Calls that are after hours, I kind of have a standard workday, 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. But if you've got calls after hours, you've got calls on the weekends, if you schedule those out, it gives me some time. And obviously, since my Calendly does not offer those hours, that's where you would need to reach out to me directly.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'll work with that person as best I can. I do have a couple of folks that I don't use regularly, but folks who could, I would feel comfortable with them handling requests outside of regular hours if I was not available. I'm not going
Hmm.
to, if I am available, I'll handle it. Um, so, and then of course, anytime we have like a bigger task, like that dog show, we knew about that dog show months in advance, and we planned
Hmm.
that out. We literally were in contact with the show organizers. We had access to the itinerary, the schedule, all of the different breeds that were going to be present, so that we could have access. We utilized the American Kennel Club website for descriptions so that we weren't just making them up on the fly. There were actual like AKC specific descriptions. They had a great, it was hosted at I think it was like a city or county, like a fairground. And so they had a great website that had access to like a 3D map of the different buildings. So we were able to get a real good idea of where that person needed to sit, where they needed to place their camera. So it was definitely something where we made sure to plan ahead of time and had numerous calls with that person to set expectations, numerous calls with the person who handled the request because it was not me. Um, I was actually heading out to CSUN at that time, so that's why we had to have a substitute come in for that.
Hmm.
But any of those bigger requests, it makes sense to me to plan those out ahead of time. If it's going
Yeah.
to be something that's more complex, why wouldn't you want to take some time to,
Okay.
familiarize yourself? I do a lot of airport navigations. That's probably one of the biggest standard type calls that I handle. I've got some folks that travel on a very regular basis, and some of these airports are airports that they're familiar with and they're fine with it, but it's just nice to have that extra set of eyes. And other airports are, yeah, I don't remember this one. I've been through here, but it's been a while. And for them to find the, pet relief or service animal relief, yeah, I can't remember where it's at exactly in this terminal or if it's outside or, so being able to provide that assistance, I need to familiarize myself with that environment. So anytime I do something that's more complex like that with that user's permission, I'll spend some prep time, but I will not bill that prep time at full cost. I'll bill it at half cost. So if I spend 10 minutes preparing, looking at airport maps, looking at walkthrough videos, getting a sense of mapping out how I need to navigate this person through that environment, if I spend 10 minutes, it's just going to be 5 minutes deducted from their time balance.
Mhm.
And the nice thing is I guarantee you we're going to save 5 minutes during the navigation because we're not going to be going in
Exactly.
circles trying to figure out where we're at. I'll know where the signs are that I need to look for. Because I tell you what, when you go through those airports, there's so much information. You're just bombarded with information visually, right? And sometimes, even as a sighted person, it's difficult to know what you're supposed to be looking for to give you the correct information that you need, and so that you can kind of tune out all of that extra stuff that's going on.
Okay, so we were got slightly interrupted there talking about airports, but also I was gonna say like people can, I'm sure it's helpful if they can give you their schedule ahead of time too, like their flights and all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and actually that's kind of preferred. So with folks that are doing that with me on a regular basis, what they typically will do is they'll just forward me their itinerary when they get it from the airline. I reach out to them to find out, hey, how much ahead of time do you plan on being there? And as that day approaches, we'll make sure to fine tune the time. Usually, what they do is once they're on their way, they'll text or WhatsApp me and let me know, hey, on my way, I'll be there in 20 minutes or whatever. So I'm ready to go. But even before that, being able to put that information into the into the airline's website. I can track, are they running behind? Is there a delay? And there's been times where I've actually informed my users about a delay before they even knew it themselves, simply
Wow.
because
Yeah.
I was paying attention to their flight.
Hmm.
And what I was saying earlier was, if I'm going to be navigating somebody through an environment, I need to know that environment myself. I can't do it
Hmm.
on the fly and expect to do it proficiently or well. I mean, can I? Yeah, but it's not necessarily preferred. I would like to see that environment before we go there so that I know I'm going to make a left-hand turn at the Starbucks. I know that to find the pet, relief area, we're not going to be in that terminal. We have to continue on to the next terminal. All of those things are just real beneficial for me to make sure that our time spent together on that live call go nice and smooth and are as efficient as possible. I don't like navigating through airports as a sighted person. So be doing that while you've got staff bombarding you with you need to sit in this chair and you need to wait here and you need it's wild. It's such a wild environment. So being able to provide kind of that calming sense of, hey, I've got you. I know where we're
Hmm.
going. I'm going to get you there, and it's going to be a nice, smooth process. That goes a long way. But having that time to prepare is absolutely something that is beneficial for myself and also for the person receiving the assistance.
Yeah, it sounds like you really go the extra mile, and like you said, it ends up even saving them time in the long run. So
It,
that's cool.
yeah, it really does.
Yeah, and it's really fortuitous about these Ray-Ban glasses, how they just kind of came on the scene just as you were starting your business. And
Yep.
so like um that I mean I think it's even better than wearing the phone around your neck in a
Hmm.
lanyard or whatever because it's at eye level and you can just simply
Hmm.
turn your head and not even worry about your phone at all. And it, yeah,
Yep.
it's just that hands-free experience just really can't be beat.
So one of the things, yeah. So about that, like especially with navigation, right? If the person holding the phone is holding the phone crooked, they're still
Hmm.
traveling
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
their body is still oriented to move forward. It doesn't matter
Yep.
how that phone. So if you somehow even if you are wearing it on a lanyard or like a chest mount harness, chest mount harness is a little bit better. But if you're wearing it on a lanyard, a lot of times there's going to be a little bit of a bounce, right?
Yep.
And because it's connected to your body and your upper body is kind of moving a decent amount, that can create that kind of steady motion, that almost like a rocking emotion that
Hmm.
me as a sighted person that is seeing that, I have to kind of combat that and
Yeah.
try and keep my focus on everything and think of it being static, even though I'm getting this bouncing motion. Um, and with again with the Ray Bans having it be a wearable on your face, I can just say, hey, can you turn your head to the left, turn your head to the right, and your body is still going to move in a forward motion.
Exactly.
I don't have to worry about you turning and now all of a sudden getting yourself off that path of travel and moving in a wrong direction. So, yep, I
Yep, and
absolutely love
even
them.
joining the call too, like you don't have to give them a link or whatever. They can just even hands-free say call, visualize or
Yep.
whatever, right? Yeah.
Yep. It's just my name. So if somebody wants
Call
to save
Sean.
my name in their contacts as the business name, that's fine. That works.
Hmm.
I remember, I remember back when we were doing the specialized help program when I was at Mabby, and we had this one gentleman who was using voice controls, and he was using Siri, and he just could not get it to recognize his voice to place calls. And so finally, what we did is we asked him to remember just one particular thing that he was not going to forget because he always would forget like what the actual phrase was to call us.
Uh,
And so he literally would say, "Call be my chocolate," and that was his word, and we just set that as
okay.
his Siri, prompt.
Yeah.
And
Whatever
I tell
works.
you what, after we set it to call be my chocolate, he
You never
never
forgot.
forgot how to call us. So
I
yeah,
love it.
little tricks of in the accessibility community.
Yeah, very cool. Well, this has been exciting. I'm sure we could talk all day about some of the stories, adventures you've helped people with, etc.,
We really
etc.
could.
But this has been lovely, and yeah, I hope folks will really take advantage of your service, and best of luck to you in the future.
That sounds good. I certainly appreciate the time today. Certainly appreciate anyone who's tuning in. Don't forget the website is www.visualizeaccess.com. And if you want to email me directly, it's Shawn, SHAWN, at visualizeaccess.com. And I'll even throw in a phone number for you, which is okay to text 517 630 1420.
Very, very cool. And so all you guys listening, be sure to like and subscribe and comment and everything, because I want this video to get a lot of views so that we get the word out there about this, so that maybe Shawn will have to hire a few more people because he'll get so many.
Yay! That would be
Yeah.
amazing.
There you go. Well, thanks so much, and hope to have you on again sometime.
Yeah, that would be great. It'd be great to come back and kind of share some of the updates and, see how we've progressed over time. Maybe next year about this time. How's that sound?
Sounds like a plan.
All right, Connie. Thanks again for your
Okay.
time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye bye.